Gmod videos are something that I thoroughly adore, whether it be from the perfectly handcrafted Skideo706's videos or from the smooth but random El Toro64 Russ's videos. There are countless Gmod videos on YouTube, and I basically wanted to give my take on the tutorial side of these videos. This video I'll be trying to give a tutorial on Gmod Animation. The first thing we should start with is software, since without it you're not even going to have a black screen for your video. You need at least 3 things to make a Gmod video: recording software, editing software, and Garry's Mod. Additional stuff can be stuff like sound, which I'll get into later. A good recording software is Fraps. If you can't get Fraps, then I highly recommend OBS. The only reason, at least in my opinion, you should be using a screen recorder is really to record things that can't be captured with just screenshots. However, screenshots is what will be the main usage throughout most of Gmod Animation. Like Colin said,
animation isn't simply recording some ragdoll horribly trying to do a complex action. Animation is the illusion of movement.
A good editing software is very important to making high quality Gmod videos, so picking a good one is very important. You can get Vegas Pro or other softwares. If you can't afford an editing software, then you're really handicapping yourself. Now for additional stuff, Audacity is a good program to test sounds and use for recording sound bits of any kind. Another useful tool is GSFscape to extract sounds from Steam games. Now let's talk about add-ons to download for Garry's Mod. I recommend Stop Motion Helper if you're going for an add-on to give you access to animation. It's also useful to keep progress as to what the animation will look like in post-production. Using some lighting tools to get better looks in a scene is additional but effective. Ragdoll Mover is useful if you're trying to pose your character in a position that can't be done with the physics gun, or you can use add-ons to make ragdolls more easier to use. And other useful add-ons are stuff such as green screens if you're planning on using those, and anything else needed to make your animation look nice as possible. Now settings are optional since really you don't have to have a high graphics to make an animation, but if you want yours to look presentable or at the very least not look like Minecraft, then I recommend turning the settings up to at least medium. If your computer can't even run medium settings, then I can't really help you with that. Now an essential part of making a Gmod animation is having inspiration in a story. I know that a lot of random Gmod animations don't have a story of any kind and are just random stuff thrown around on the screen. However, having a story or at least inspiration to make the animation is a very important step in making any type of animation. Write stuff down and see if you can translate it into a Gmod animation. Or do storyboarding so that you know what goes where in a scene before you even start making the scene in Garry's Mod. If you can do this stuff, that's great. If you can't, then die. Now it's time to get into a map and start animating. Now of course, animating is the most tedious part of the project. Never rush during this part and take breaks to ensure that you don't go insane. Before we get into actually using Stop Motion Helper, this is a very important element that I've not seen talked about in other tutorial videos, maybe the exception of bullshit, but is the use of animation styles. I am making the declarative statement that there are 2 types of animation styles in Garry's Mod: smooth and the cartoon style. Cartoon animation in particular is the most used throughout videos because it takes less work and is deprived of using frames that have little to no in-betweening. In-betweening, if you don't know, is adding more frames between 2 frames to make the animation look smooth. So to say, if I had one guy move his arm down, I can start with 2 images, one with the beginning of the movement and the other to be the end result. Adding less frames in makes the animation seem more hyperactive and moves in a non-realistic way. More frames in between gives the illusion that there's more time taken to get to the action and might come off as more realistic. To put it this way, smooth is realistic while the cartoon style is, well, cartoonish. Now this is a guideline step to establish which animation style you should use. You should identify the tone of your story. If your story is mostly funny stuff happening with no real seriousness in it, then the best style to use is cartoonish. But if your story is more grittier and has moments that feel like you're watching a movie, then a smoother style is recommended. Of course, you don't have to follow tone using different styles, but it will add emphasis to the story you're trying to tell. Now let's talk about using Stop Motion Helper. Here are some keybinds you should have set before starting. When you open the SMH menu, you will find a time bar at the bottom of your screen. The white marker indicates where the moment you're at on the timeline. Moving this bar changes the position of where you're at on the timeline. To record a pose, right-click on an object you want to animate, then press the record button. If you record a pose, it spawns a green bar indicating an animation. The frame rate indicates how fast the animation will play. Ease in and ease out makes the animation go in and out more smoothly, so it doesn't look as robotic. If you don't know what number to use, try messing around with the numbers to find the best option. Now I think it's time we talk about how to use different styles of Gmod Animation. To do smooth, use more in-betweening amongst your object, as in give it more area to play out the animation, and add some in-betweening frames so it looks more clean. Smooth animation, of course, is a lot harder to do than cartoonish, so keep that in mind. To do cartoonish, use less in-betweening. Make each frame have less time to go to where they need to go. To really get better at doing these animation styles is just a matter of time and practice. Continue to do it and you'll hopefully get better as you go along. Now if you need hints as to what makes a good animation, I'll just read off the 12 principles of animation to give you an idea. Squash and stretch is used to give an object more weight and volume. If you throw a bouncy ball, it's going to squash when it lands before coming back up. Exaggeration can give it more of a cartoonish effect, which I'll get into exaggeration later. Anticipation is used for preparing an action. If you're going to punch someone, you gotta wind up the punch or it's going to look like there's no weight to it, nor can we expect it. Usually in Gmod animations, you don't really need this, but if you're actually trying to do actual animations, then stick to giving anticipation for something to happen. Staging is having main focuses on certain things at a certain time. Gmod videos are notorious for skipping staging as a step of animation, since really the majority of the time the setting doesn't add anything to the characters. And if it does, it still doesn't have the elements in the background removed. And really, the stuff in the background makes the animation more wacky and confusing, so really in this sense, pick your poison. Stray ahead and pose to pose are animation methods used to make animations. In most Gmod tutorials that I see, most people just do stray ahead, which is just doing one keyframe then continuing to move forward to complete the set. What I usually do is pose to pose, which is drawing extreme poses, aka poses that are important parts of the position, then adding in between frames so it looks better. In most 3D softwares, including Stop Motion Helper, the in-between frames are generated so you don't have to go back and add the in-between frames yourself. But it is better if you did so because sometimes it won't look the greatest. Follow-through and overlapping are very important to making both smooth and cartoon animations. Firstly, what follow-through does is it makes an object continue to move forward even after it should have already stopped. To give you an example of something not to do, in my runaway animation I failed to use follow-through to show that the teacher actually landing. Because if you were to stand up and jump right now and land on the ground, your body doesn't stop immediately. All the muscles and even bones move around even after the landing. In Dr. Lau's animation Heavy Problems, you can see the pyro landing on the ground and it doesn't just land and stay there, it continues to move even after considerably landing. If you watch any animation that uses follow-through, just slow down the video to see how it's done. Now overlapping is to give emphasis to follow-through. Everything moves at different speeds, so having something lead can be considerably overlapping. Slow in and slow out is what makes something look real when in motion. Already stated before, ease in and ease out are used to capture this. A car doesn't just start moving at a constant speed the second you press the gas pedal. It eases out into the speed, then when coming to a stop, it eases in. Arcs are something that should be noted as important to realism. Almost everything moves in an arc. Take an arm for example. If you move your arm from your shoulder and extend it, it'll move in an arc to get to that location. It's not like a linear line where it just goes from A to B. Secondary action is used to give more support to the main action. Let's say someone is knocking on a door. Having someone knock on a door doesn't really tell us anything about the character unless we give it secondary action. Having the character look back and forth before knocking tells us that he's concerned about something. It adds to the main action but doesn't take it away from it. Timing is basically preparing for something. Having pauses between an action can give us time to retain information as displayed. In my Imagination Tech Camp Guide video, I had the heavy's hand move up, but I waited a second before I had the soldier punch him. That way we can take in the information that's presented to us before the punch. Appeal isn't really a requirement for Gmod animations, since you literally can use any model and animate it, but it's best to pick a recognizable character or making your own character design through one of others, like an OC. Lastly, what will be important is exaggeration. Gmod animations are special in particular compared to other animations is because of how exaggerated you can be with any of the characters. Exaggeration should be used to really emphasize something and have more extreme to it. If I have someone yelling, make their mouth wider and have the face convey that they are yelling. It gives a lot more attention to the audience if you're more exaggerated. If any of this didn't help you, or in the very least didn't give you a broad idea of exactly what the 12 principles of animation are, then I highly recommend that you check out Alan Becker's 12 principles of animation. It basically goes over everything I went over but in more detail. Now before I get into editing, I want to cover one last thing about animation, and that is lip sync. Lip sync is either the hardest thing to do in Gmod animation or the easiest.
You suck! Oh, man.
How to practice lip sync is firstly to get a model, have his mouth visible, and have him say a word that comes first into your mind. Once you have a word, get something as reference like a mirror so you know what it looks like to say that word. Then use Face Poser on your character and animate the big parts of you moving your mouth when they're saying the words. If I was to say, for example, yes, have the mouth be open when you say the S part, then have him close his mouth when he's done pronouncing it.
Yes!
Now, if you're going for a smoother animation, you just can't get away with having a couple of frames. You have to add more of the in-betweens of the word so it actually looks like he's saying it.
Yes!
For example, in Dr. Face's Rappy and Demo, when Demo says catfish, he doesn't just open his mouth to get the high points of the talking. There's in-betweening so it actually looks like he's saying catfish. Meanwhile, in Kitty's video, Team Fabulous 2, when one of the engineers say building a sentry, the mouth is just moving to get it to look like he's just saying the bigger parts of the word, or really just to convey that he's talking. But what extinguishes the difference between good lip sync and bad is the expressions. If you watch literally any other Gmod animation video, there isn't just opening the mouth to pronounce the word. There's also changes in the expressions. Making good expressions that actually fit how it states the word is very important to good lip sync. Or you can just do random faces that make absolutely no sense.
Yeah, money well spent.
If I didn't explain it super well, then watch this video. It does a better job at explaining how lip sync works. So now that you've gotten basically all the frames and sounds, now it's time to put all that together to make your animation. Editing is the second longest part of working on an animation, because now you're just combining all the images into one to make a movement. I can't really explain too much as to how to edit your video, because editing is solely based around the person editing it and not just a standard anyone follows. And also because not every editing software is the same. But for this video, I'll give advice if you have Vegas Pro. If you go to your options and scroll down to preferences, you'll have a menu that comes up. Click on the editing tab and then look for new still image length. Messing around with this will determine how big any image that's dropped into Vegas will be once dropped. If you have it set to your FPS in the actual animation, then all you need to do is drop them all in instead of dropping them and having to resize them. And once you're done adding all of it together, render it and then you're done. And that's basically how you make a Gmod animation. I feel like I should keep this in mind, but if you're someone that just wants to do animation but doesn't enjoy it, then don't do it. Putting yourself through this much stress just to shit out a project is not worth it, even if it becomes a hit. Explore in areas that you want to learn but don't hate doing, because if you hate doing it, then what's the point of continuing it? Antoine Delact, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is another famous Gmod animator, and what he's really famous for is his gorgeous Freeman animations. But now he's gotten so tired of it and doesn't even enjoy talking about it. Remember to enjoy a project that you're doing. If you don't enjoy it, then don't do it. But if you are enjoying it, then continue doing it. With all that being said, I hope this guide at the very least gives you ideas as to what to do and how to do it. If it didn't, then my apologies. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go get some water. Thanks for watching, I'm Cameron, and I'll see you all on the next one. See ya.